Hello and welcome to Experimental Lab, the daily show with JK. I'm JK, your host, and I'm joined by Elias. Am I right?
Hello. Elias, that's me.
All right. So you are new to Stop. You are not new to Stop Now. And Stop Now talk shows, like, you have been there like on the weekends. So you're new to this Experimental Lab. And thank you again. I really appreciate on a short notice you agreed to join me and also help us out and trying to understand like what we are doing here. Welcome again. How was your Monday morning?
My Monday morning was relatively uneventful. I had some pretzels for breakfast, and then I contemplated life itself. Uneventful, as usual. And I'm ready for some corporate injustices to look at. There's plenty of those. Plenty.
All right. So before we jump in, on the background, our team is working. I know like I didn't give you the full picture of it. I don't want like to reveal everything. I just want to keep some surprise for you. The more you are going to be in this show, co-hosting and supporting me on this journey, you will get to learn more. And our teammates, like a couple of them will jump in and drop off because they are working on the projects on the back end to expose this corporate crimes, and we are doing an undercover operation and investigating it like big billion-dollar companies. We are trying to challenge people who are brave enough to take this journey and join hands with us and support with us. And I see that like you are a very brave person. So Elias, like tell me, what questions do you have for us?
What are your, or what's the most immediate goals of this channel? What's the mission statement? What's the purpose? And what are some of the core actions required to achieve that purpose?
Well, I am more of a, I don't know. I will be honest with you, right? So let me ask you, instead of answering the question, right? That's a rude way, right? Asking a question, answering a question with a question. So what is purpose in life? I don't know, right? The same way, like I was associated with Stop Now, and I heard like so many of the victim stories, and we wanted to test this out, right? And we all came up with this idea. Then let's do an experiment. How do we validate like these stories of these victims? And some of them, like they volunteered and they challenged us, like you do this, and everything will happen the way we say that. So I'm not a believer. I'm a non-believer. I openly admit this, like in every other channel, in every place, with everyone, like including my family, friends, colleagues, wherever I speak. So that's one thing like made me to question this as well, right? I don't trust anybody else. Not that like I don't trust anyone. I do trust people, but I just want the proof, just like how the legal system works, right? Without evidence, you cannot make accusation about anybody else. Everybody has their own right. So I said, like, let's explore this, right? Whatever the victims are saying, let's run through it and see where do we stand. That's how to answer your question. I don't know. I went all over, right? Might be my answer is right now is to bring in awareness and to expose these stories.
Okay, that's a good initial one. I would think that this project could use a more specific direction. Bringing awareness to something is definitely something valuable to do. And then there are projects within that scope that could, be immense, multi-month projects, or, have really large effects. Even in the beginning, I believe people are more naturally skeptical of corporations now than the victims of those corporations. If an Amazon worker comes out and says that Amazon forced them to, stand up for 10 hours a day and never use the bathroom, I think they're more believable than Amazon saying, no, we didn't. In general, there's different levels of trust in corporations over time. But I think nowadays people are at the place where we always expect companies to do the things that'll make the money. We know that companies will do whatever they can get away with, whether it's against the law or not against the law and just, bad for people, that they'll do what makes the money. Profit is a number. Happiness is not something you can easily measure. Morality is not something you can easily measure. But if you dump toxic sludge in a river and it saves you, $5 per pound of, whatever you're making, your widgets, then that's what companies will do. They don't have to pay for the damage they do. That's not part of capitalism, baby. They just do what they're allowed to do. But that's a multifaceted system as well. Government is inextricably linked to businesses, to corporations. There's always rules, and it feels that whatever injustice corporations do, even if there's an antitrust law tacked on that tackles a specific issue, it's just a game of whack-a-mole. And then even so, companies will still do this, and they'll do it for as long as they can get away with it. Because a lot of the time these crimes are not even looked at or punished. For example, we all know that CEOs of corporations, can make hundreds of millions of dollars per year, while the lowest in an organization, in a company, might make, $12 an hour at the front desk of whatever. It's not far-fetched to think that there could be an antitrust law that limits the compensation within a corporation from the highest to the lowest paid. Like, why isn't there a rule that says, oh, you can't pay your highest earner more than this such and such multiple of the lowest earner, and that keeps things fair? Or what about, if you have over 500 employees or 1,000 employees, you have to limit the power of the people in charge, or else they'll just take advantage of everyone below them. At a certain point, corporations become like governments. Your mom and pop shop, it's like, oh, the owner's right there, they own everything, and then they hire, a few people, and they have, the small company. But at the point where you're international, or at the point where you're like, oh, you know what, we're just going to fire 1,000 people this month because we're trying to restructure and save some money. At that point, those companies are so big, and they're so spread out, especially if they're public and they have shareholders, that their structures are, rife with abuse. Managers and everyone above them can take advantage of the people below them, can take advantage of the environment, and there's no say. Employees have no say in what the company does. The people in the environments that the companies take advantage of have no say, especially when there's no laws about it. So we just live in a world of corporate abuse. There's plenty of it. That's my spiel.
Yes, totally right. I do agree, right? Again, we want to test it out, right? So if we are in the corporate field, right? Again, I'll be honest here, I've been in the corporate world for more than 25 years. I never knew that this is happening behind the scene. It's a story state. I mean, whom to blame is what the problem here, right? We just keep circling around saying that the corporate, the governments are enabling them, right, to make such profits. And we all know that monopoly is not accepted, and also fair trade, all those laws and things that we have evolved over centuries, still we are struggling, right? Elias, help me out, right? So let me share you this, right? Again, since you are new to it, I'm just bringing that up. It's a lot of information for one go. Again, you are going to be with us, hopefully, for a long period. So I'll share this information. This is one of our campaign sites. We are targeting these stories and how non-immigrants, right, who come on a visa, what is their legal status, or what can they do if they are being mistreated? Not just, it's a easy word, right? The words are so powerful. So if they are victims, right, if they are being abused or they are forced to work, we have labor laws, right? And we have process and system in place. Will they be able to get justice, right? For example, if I'm on a visa, will I be able to make a complaint and not get terminated or not lose my legal status in the country? How do I stay back? All
Well, as
these,
you mentioned, this is like an intermingling of government and corporations. This has been going on for like a really long time. Like it's a development of an economic system, right? Currently in the United States, we live under capitalism, although there's no discrete set of rules that limits, oh, this is capitalism and this is not capitalism, right? Because most countries on the planet are capitalist, with variations in democratic structures, dictatorships, this, that, and the other. It's a global economy. So for countries to get involved in any way, they have to do some capitalist stuff. And within the structures that we have, when the government works together with the corporations in some ways, in this way being, the visa, there's also people being abused. For example, the most recent example of a massive amount of abuse for people on visas is the FIFA World Cup and Qatar. When that's another whole thing. When Qatar basically bribed all of the FIFA judges to say, "Oh, we're going to get it in 2022. We're going to get the World Cup." They had to hire tens of thousands of workers, hundreds of thousands of workers from India, Pakistan, African countries, Middle Eastern countries, all over. And what they do is they take away their passports. There's a law stating that they can't switch jobs without their employer's permission. And then there's just an immense amount of abuse. This is no secret. If you look on YouTube, you'll find many different explanations and history and revealing YouTube videos revealing the status and the state of their living conditions, their working conditions. Many of these people were forced to work in 120 degrees Fahrenheit weather to build stadiums that are going to be used once, and then that's it. I mean, let alone the World Cup being like a massive humanitarian crisis just on its existence. The United States does this too. I mean, every wealthy country wants cheap labor. And the United States wants immigrants from poorer countries to come in and do cheap labor, especially for farming and for manufacturing jobs. Qatar did this for building. Thousands of people died. There was massive abuse with underpaying, creating the living conditions, treating these people like really awfully. I don't see an immediate solution for any of that. Like, what would you even do when an entire country or when the government specifically works on purpose to take advantage of the systems globally that they're allowed to? Like, oh, we're going to pay you, but we're also going to put in all of these hidden things that will make it so that we pay you as little as possible. And also you might die while working. And also you'll be working for free for like months until we decide to pay you. That is modern day slavery. Working without pay, working without fair representation. Qatar just did this the most blatantly. The United States does it too. I mean, we've had our culture war issues of people being against immigrants coming from other countries, but the United States survives on it.
Yeah, exactly.
But if the system, okay,
Go ahead.
if the system is itself involved in this matter, neither you can do anything nor I can do anything. But here in United States, the scenario is different. All right, let's talk about the scenario number one for Qatar you have just mentioned, right? Just a minute back. Therein, the system itself is involved. To whom you'll report? Obviously, when you say something, when you raise any voice, we're keeping this voice, we're putting this voice for the system, so the system can listen to us and they can take a right judgment, right? Or when in case of, that's a different scenario. Here here the system itself involved in this matter, so nobody will listen to you nor me. But here in United States, all the big corporates and the recruiters, they are involved in this matter, not the system.
I think they're part of the system. All of them, like, I don't know the exact structure of the recruitment in Qatar, but whether or not there are companies hired by the government, they're at least working super closely together. And there's two issues here. One is when corporations or a government does something cruel or, you know, against human rights or abusive, and they're the ones specifically perpetrating it. But there's also the scenario where the companies are doing that abuse and the government just does nothing about it, because they directly profit from it, or because the government doesn't care about human rights. They just care about money and about, you know, keeping the status quo. Why would the Qatari government pretend to care about the human rights about the workers when they're directly benefiting from the World Cup happening in Qatar? They just put on a face for the world, like, oh, you know, we're super duper treating these people well, only because they want to have a good image. And as it relates to the United States, the United States wants to put on a better image than Qatar does. There's more human rights in the United States. Gay people are allowed to get married for now, but it's a matter of, for the United States, it's not the United States directly perpetrating that. It's just allowing all these corporations to get away with it, even though it undoubtedly knows that they're abusing those systems. There's plenty of corporations who illegally hire undocumented migrants to do super, super cheap labor, and then they get underpaid because there's no supervision over them.
Yes, as an evolving thing, right? So I am kind of getting an answer to it, right? So the experiment is like more towards not addressing every other problem. I do understand, right? So people are people, right? Every individual story and case is unique, but we are focusing on the corporate world, which is mainly focused on white collar crimes, right? I will say that, right? This is more on sophisticated, high-tech crime kind of thing, right? So technology and super specialty, these visas are like people who are graduates and doctors, engineers, who are specially trained, right? How can these people get exploited? That is the whole concept, right? I'm not talking about like illiterates or people with very minimum education trying to survive, go to other countries, somehow immigrate and get some job and work in hard labor condition. We all know that in Middle East, many of the countries like are violating human rights, right? That is one thing. Like America as such, like United States proudly propagates to the world like we are better than any other world, but it's not the truth, right? That is what like we are trying to expose here, right? saying that like you have given certain rights and liberty for many people. We all appreciate that, but that doesn't mean that like we are perfect and we are doing everything right. So we are trying to focus on this particular problem with this visa, and the victims who have been affected on this, they are still scared to come out and fight for their own rights. So that is a horrible thing. Like I just can't believe that, like why people chose to. But the reason I can say, it's easy money, right? Everybody wants to make money, and they accept this. Okay, for you think that this is a human right violation. I'm ready to be slave. Jokingly, somebody said that, like in this show as well before. And I can bring in that victim who has been a survivor and now he's thriving. And he gave us an extensive interview as well. We can explore more on that. But right now, due to time limit, like we are trying to restrict and close it out. And again, Shiva, thank you for joining us.
Welcome.
We might have to jump into the other one since you are on the project.
Right.
And Elias might have more questions to you later on, to you and Amar on the project. We will run through it on a daily basis and give him more update on what this experiment about.
Well, I am glad to be part of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And there's definitely a lot more to go over. We haven't even touched on just how, I mean, let alone just the visas thing. There are multiple other problems that touches into. The entire immigration system, the policing system, how government treats people from other countries, you know, what a visa even is, where in the system it's rife for abuse. The problem with pretty much everything is individuals will always take advantage of cracks in the system to their own benefit. And it's the structures themselves which will always need fixing. These political and corporate structures that are built, companies are these structures. The visa system is that structure. Whenever there's an ability to be abused, it will be abused. And you can fix an individual problem like, oh, hey, this person has a visa and it ran out and they're in the country and they're illegal and they're being abused by their employer. That's one thing, and you can solve that person's problem. You can even solve all of their problems. But if the crack in the structure still exists, the problem can still happen again. It's just a recurring thing. It'll just happen somewhere else. Enron shut down because it was rife with problems and the abuse was allowed to happen. And it still happens, today when it happens. FTX, the company that just, showed its open hand with abuse. These will just keep happening until band-aids or little stitches are put into that system. But I'm glad to be part of this, and I'm looking forward to exploring some more corporate crimes.
Wonderful. Thank you, Elias, and bye for now.